Motion pictures. Shadows flickering on a wall. For more than a century, images like these have caused audiences to gasp for breath and beg for more. Palaces would be built to show them. Empires would be built to make them. And emperors would emerge to rule supreme. But of all the studios created to produce fuel for Hollywood's dream factory, perhaps none were as ambitious or as innovative as the one that took a century by storm. It was on this lot that some of the greatest motion pictures in the history of Hollywood were made. Here, Shirley Temple danced, Betty Grable sang, and Marilyn Monroe made the world fall in love with her. Will Rogers, Henry Fonda, and Gregory Peck called it home, as did directors like Howard Hawks and John Ford. And it was here that a man named Zanuck built a dynasty. 20th Century Fox got its start more than 8 decades ago as the brainchild of William Fox, a garment industry worker from New York City. To get in on the ground floor of the rapidly growing motion picture industry, the Hungarian-born entrepreneur sold everything he owned. After establishing a chain of theaters, he produced his first film, Life's Shop Window, in 1914. And within 2 years had moved the Fox Film Company from the crowded streets of New York to the spacious hills of Hollywood, California. In search of a star to help build his company, Fox recruited an unknown actress from Cincinnati, Ohio named Theodosia Goodman and paid her the queenly sum of $100 a week. Changing her name to Theda Bara, Fox told the press that she was born in the shadow of the pyramids, and her name was an anagram for Arab death. Cast in films like Cleopatra, The Devil's Daughter, Sin, and A Fool There Was, she personified what came to be known as the vamp or vampire, luring hapless men to their doom. Judging from this scene, the public could hardly suspect that filmdom's first femme fatale was, in fact, a rather shy and bookish young woman, more inclined to scholarship than seduction. The phenomenal success of Theda Bara helped put Fox Studios on the map. And westerns like The Iron Horse, directed by John Ford, helped establish the company's growing reputation for quality. Westerns became a staple at Fox Studios, and Tom Mix and his horse Tony became the company's resident Western heroes. By 1926, it was estimated that American movie houses were attracting more than 50 million patrons every week, and competition between the major studios was fierce. Particularly cutthroat was the battle between Fox and Warner Brothers to develop synchronized sound films. While Warner's rushed into production with Vitaphone, a process that employed sound on large phonographic discs, William Fox developed Movietone, a superior method which recorded sound directly onto the film. Seen here in these rare tests, Movietone inventor Theodore Case demonstrates some of the very first talking pictures.
Most of you probably have never seen a piece of moving picture film. Here is a piece of the standard film. I will hold it against my white shirt front, and I believe you can see the outline of the picture. Maybe you can make out the pictures. Now, right along here is where we photograph the sound on the film.
Oh my, he is making eyes at me. He is up on the haste to me. Yes, sir, that's my baby, no, sir, no, baby, yes, sir, that's my baby now. I got no more wind.
Using this revolutionary movie tone process, films like Seventh Heaven, starring Janet Gaynor and Charles Farrell, featured a fully orchestrated musical score that for the first time did not have to be performed live in individual movie houses. Paired in 12 films, Gaynor and Farrell became America's most popular screen lovers. And it was Miss Gaynor's performance in this film that helped win her the first ever Academy Award for Best Actress of 1927. Another innovation in the use of sound on film came just 4 weeks before the premiere of Warner Brothers' The Jazz Singer. Directed by F.W. Murnau, Sunrise featured synchronized sound effects. And if you listen closely, the first words ever heard in a feature film. Starring Janet Gaynor and George O'Brien, the story concerned a young woman whose marriage and life are threatened by her unfaithful husband. With its expressionistic sets and bold cinematography, Sunrise quickly distinguished itself as one of the finest films of the Silent Age. But the Silent Age was fading fast. Within a year, Fox Movietone newsreels were bringing theatergoers closer than ever to the world around them. Astounding audiences with the sights and sounds of everything. From Lindbergh's famous flight to his triumphant return. And for the first time, audiences could see and hear the filmed image of an American president.
And as President of the United States, I bestow the Distinguished Flying Cross as a symbol of appreciation for what he is and what he has done upon Colonel Charles A. Lindbergh.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, our next act will hardly need an introduction. Allow me to present St. Louis and Company.
With the age of sound, Fox continued to recruit an impressive roster of top talent, many making their screen debuts.
This is a knife-throwing act, and I use a human target. And the gentleman that's kindly consented to act as my target tonight is none other than my old partner and pal, Dan Amora Dan.
He missed him.
I was headed for China.
China? Gee, I'd love that.
Gee, you know, we had jobs out there, 3 of us boys, and... Well, then this came up.
And you threw that over to work here?
No, you don't understand. I don't work here. I belong here.
A convict?
Yes. But we call ourselves inmates.
Nellie asks my advice on everything. Nellie thinks the world of me. Hot shots, man. I wrote the song and the guys stopped. How do you like that?
I refuse to have prisoners of war tortured.
You refuse.
I refuse.
You may go. How do you like that, my little radish?
You'd better go with him if you want those guns.
You think he got mad of me because I take you?
He'll never forgive you.
No. The Cayon is my friend. We don't fight over women. If I get tired of you, I give you back to him. What do I care?
I'm gonna be away for a while. I'm going scouting. But I reckon I'm gonna be lonely this time. You know, you can get sort of used to having somebody not like you. And when they're not around, you miss them, not liking you. That's why I reckon I'm gonna be lonesome. But I'll be thinking of you. Goodbye.
Unfortunately, the age of sound coincided with the Great Depression.
The tremendous crowds which you see gathered outside the stock exchange are due to the greatest crash in the history of the New York Stock Exchange in market prices.
The crash of the New York stock market sent shockwaves that rippled throughout the nation and Hollywood. In just 2 days, Fox Company stock had dropped from $119 to $1 a share. William Fox's media empire was crumbling, and eventually, the once powerful mogul was forced to leave the company he founded.
Time changes many things, but it can't change old friends, can it?
No, my lady. Oh, no, my lady.
Now being run by a succession of production chiefs, the financially ailing studio still continued to turn out an impressive string of films.
Happy New Century, 1900.
One of the most notable was the 1933 release of this British import written by Noel Coward.
We've had wars before without the world breaking.
My world isn't very big.
It was an epic saga about the changing fortunes of an English household.
Where is Africa? Don't be silly. Well, where is it? I never heard such an ignorant girl in all my life. Haven't you ever seen it on the map? No, I've seen it on the map. But where is it really?
I think you should have spoken to your daughter before you came to see me. I never interfere with my son's affairs.
I suppose you imagine that my daughter isn't good enough to marry your son. I don't know why you should talk like that. Some of us have got on in the world, and some of us haven't.
Cavalcade became a resounding success, earning Fox its first Academy Award for Best Picture. But the studio needed more than prestige. It needed stars.
Demo round the band. Yes, you can.
And no Fox star would shine as brightly as the great Will Rogers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you kindly.
Abelfred, I'm not going to put liquor into my cooking.
What more? Mincemeat without brandy? That's sacrilegious. If you're going to leave out something, you want to win the prize, you better leave out the mincemeat.
What manner of madman art thou? Up! Before I hoist thee on my lance!
Hey, well, see, this gun ain't kidding at that. Canst tell it me where in the hell it I am?
America's best-loved humorist had come to Fox in 1929.
Hey, wake up there. Sheriff, wake him up there. Hey, wake up. If anybody's gonna sleep in this court, it'll be me.
He quickly became the highest-paid actor in films. earning an impressive $15,000 a week.
It has been said thou art a magician. Is this true?
I'm just a Democrat, but maybe I could do a few little tricks. Where I come from nowadays, you put in here got to be a magician to make a living.
But despite the box office success of Rogers' films, it would take a kid genius named Zanuck to secure the Ailing Studios' future. Darrell Francis Zanuck was something of a phenomenon in Hollywood. Born in the frontier town of Wahoo, Nebraska, he was raised on penny novels and his grandfather's tall tales of the Wild West. A World War I veteran at 20, he came to Hollywood and quickly established himself as a writer for Mack Sennett, Harold Lloyd, and Charlie Chaplin. After making a star out of a four-legged wonder named Rin Tin Tin, he was made head of production at Warner Brothers. Still in his mid-20s, he supervised the production of everything from The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson to hard-hitting crime dramas. But a man like Zanuck wasn't content to play second fiddle to the brothers Warner. It was only a matter of time before he would leave to form his own company. And when he did, Hollywood took notice. With the creation of 20th Century Pictures in 1933, Zanuck, along with partners William Getz and Joseph Skink, set about making the kinds of historical dramas and prestige pictures that were making rival studios like MGM popular with audiences all over the world. Borrowing stars from friend and investor Louis B. Mayer, Zanuck made an impressive string of hits. His formula was simple but effective. Strong stories, often based on literary classics, utilizing the finest writers, actors, and directors.
You'll find my husband for me, won't you?
There's nothing we can do. We're 1,000 miles from nowhere. Either the cold got him or the wolves. Come on, get on the sled. We're taking you to Dawson.
He isn't dead. I don't believe that.
Hey, listen, lady. In this country, when a guy's gone for 2 days, he's gone.
If you don't want to stay and look for him, you can go without me. Don't put me down!
Why, I got the pulse of the public right in my pants pocket. They love to be fooled. They like to be shocked. You know what I always told you, Nancy? There's a sucker born every minute.
And I've been a sucker long enough, Phineas Barnum.
You've hounded me, pursued me.
And then, do your part. I've done mine. What are you doing?
Now, go on.
Do you think I'd take my freedom from you? Shoot! You're a fool! You know what'll happen? I'll take you in the end. You know I will. You know I'm first.
Young, talented, and ambitious, Darrell F. Zanuck seemed like the logical choice to take over the reins of the financially and legally beleaguered Fox Studios. On May 28, 1935, 20th Century Fox was born. Now in possession of Fox's vast production, distribution, and exhibition resources, Darrell Zanuck had become a full-fledged Hollywood mogul.
20th Century Fox is more than an institution. We are all united in one common work, the work of making 20th Century Fox the outstanding company in the moving picture industry, and we will succeed.
But the Emperor needed to strengthen his empire. Hopes were high for the new company's first release, Metropolitan, an aria-filled musical starring popular opera star Lawrence Tibbett.
Figaro, 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 Figaro.
Unfortunately, The film was a dreary disappointment. To make matters worse, Fox's biggest asset, Will Rogers, along with friend and aviator Wiley Post, was killed in a plane crash.
They filed past the casket, 15,000 an hour, hour after hour. Tears for the man that made the nation smile, but it's sorrow today.
As the nation mourned Rogers, Zanuck placed his hopes for success on the tiny shoulders of a curly-topped moppet named
I'm Shirley.
Shirley Temple.
On the good ship, lollipop, it's a sweet trip to a candy shop where bonbons play on the sunny beach of Peppermint Bay.
Although she was already a star before Zanuck arrived, the studio chief made her into a household name and a national treasure.
I want to make mud pies. In fact, I'd like to be a mess. I want to make mud pies. I know that I'd find happiness.
I don't know where she came from. I've never seen anybody like that in my life. That little girl, she knew everybody's lines. I mean, she wasn't precocious. She was really a pretty nice little kid.
In every bowl of soup I see lions and tigers watching me. I make them jump right through a hoop, those animal crackers in my soup.
Some found her films cloying, sentimental,
My, you are nice.
and hopelessly predictable.
I like you. I like you. I didn't think I was going to like you at first,
Yeah?
but I like you now.
But surrounded by top co-stars, top writers, and top directors,
Mr. Clayton, did you or did you not?
Shirley's films proved to be a tonic to depression-weary audiences.
Be optimistic. Don't you be a mourner. Brighten up that corner and smile.
A nation anxious to believe in the optimistic messages of a pint-sized prophet.
I'll never forget this day. I'm very self-reliant. I'm not worried. I wouldn't know how to feel any better. Be optimistic and smile.
One of her assets was the way she could dance. When Bill Robinson would be on the set with her and teaching her, there were a couple scenes, I think you remember, where she'd tap dance up steps and down. And one day her mother said, Shirley, pay attention. Shirley said, I am. I'm hearing it. She would listen to the steps.
Say, you catch on quick. Look at that. Here's your last one.
And she learned the tap steps. I listened to them.
In the next 4 years, Shirley Temple would appear in more than a dozen films, during which time she was the #1 box office draw in the world.
Oh, my goodness.
Her actions were followed in newsreels.
Frosty ice cream and sugary cake make a happy birthday. There in the middle comes just a normal child, just a little girl.
Shirley Temple doing her bit in the March of Dimes.
And I wish you'd all do the same.
Her attention was sought by presidents and kings,
The First Lady of the Films is entertained by the First Lady of the Land.
and a generation of children lined up to meet her, copy her, or perhaps take her place.
My mom said they're looking for a little girl to play opposite Shirley Temple. I said, Mama, you get me to that studio as fast as you can. I think maybe it might be my turn.
Hey, what are you going to get for Christmas? I asked Santa Claus to bring me a doll. Santa Claus? Pooh, there ain't any Santa Claus. There is too. There is not, because my psychoanalyst told me.
If it hadn't been for Shirley Temple being the cutest, the nicest, the most adorable child in the world, and they needed an opposite, dear Gussie, I might have ended up selling hats in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. And I thank God every day for Shirley Temple.
It's great fun for the queen of the films, who is just a little girl.
Nighty-night.
Within a year, Darryl Zanuck had broadened the studio's output to include gripping detective dramas.
Fingerprint on card, not hers. Have fingerprints you mentioned a note?
Sure. This is Mr. Whitley's. I'll bet he's wondering where he lost it. I almost got caught lifting this out of Mr. Arnold's vest. This is Madame Borelli's. What's the matter, Pop? Lose something?
Not yet. But light fingers of #1 son most alarming.
There are still some gaps to be filled in, but all in all, things are becoming a little clearer.
Not to me, I assure you. Still a hopeless jumble. Mr. Franklin, Dr. Mortimer, the Barrowmans. Put it all together, and what have you got?
Murder, my dear Watson.
One moment, Mr. Manderson. I trust you will not be so foolhardy as to attempt escape. Oh, yes. May I have the crown, if you please?
You are very clever, Mr. Moto. I flattered myself that I had completely hidden my identity, but I see that my sense of security was false.
Please remain where you are. It would be most distasteful to me should I be obliged to shoot you.
Light-hearted musicals were also a staple. The best of them starring Alice Faye.
I'm always chasing rainbows, watching clouds drifting by.
Don Amici.
Afraid to dream, afraid that you may not be there.
Cesar Romero.
Hurry back, my love. It's written in the stars above. A gypsy told me so. Say, that's good.
And Olympic skating sensation, Sonia Henney.
Given me something, Lily. A new feeling about everything.
I'm glad, Trudy.
As Fox's answer to Clark Gable and Errol Flynn, Tyrone Power became the studio's #1 heartthrob.
He wasn't pretty, no. He was handsome. He had a strong face. He stopped traffic. He was something else. I'd never seen anyone quite as handsome, and he wasn't full of himself, so he wore it well.
Now, won't you tell me what this is all about?
I love you, Belle.
Kissing time. That was just like you'd died and gone to heaven. That's just how it was.
You're more lovely, more radiant than a morning in June.
Surely, I must be dreaming. You are sorrow.
The Capitan's blade is not so firm.
Still firm enough to run you through.
I needed that scratch to awaken me.
What I come back to tell you was you're a skunk. Go on, draw if you feel like it.
Another of the studio's popular male stars was a quiet, lanky actor from Grand Island, Nebraska, named Henry Fonda.
If I can make the woods, I can outrun them.
They'll kill you.
So you're not afraid, and you want me to go.
I'm not afraid. I want you to go.
Often directed by John Ford, Fonda's heroes were strong and virtuous, without seeming pious, sentimental, or melodramatic.
You ever tell a lie?
Well, you're just the kind of honest man we want on this jury. Take your place.
Mr. Watson! I want you. Mr. Bell, I heard you. I heard your voice. Then hurry, I'm burned. But I heard you. Your voice through the wire. I understood what you said. What did I say? Tell me. You said, Mr. Watson, come here. I want you.
Sweeping across the country comes one of the great literary achievements of our time.
In 1939, Zanuck, Ford, and Fonda entered into what, for many, would be their finest collaboration, and perhaps the finest film produced by Fox up to that time, The Grapes of Wrath. A powerful adaptation of John Steinbeck's Depression-era novel, the film seemed to possess all the trademarks of what was emerging as the quintessential 20th Century Fox film. It was sparse and unpretentious.
Come on, Ma, let's dance.
Oh, Tom,
Optimistic, but not trite.
Come and sit by my side if you love me.
A heroic celebration of the common man.
Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. And when the people are eating the stuff they raise and living in the houses they build, I'll be there too.
This is Jimmy Fiddler, your Hollywood correspondent of 20th Century Fox Movietone News. The talk of Hollywood today, the biggest news of the entire industry, is the tremendous progress of 20th Century Fox.
By the end of the decade, 20th Century Fox was producing more than 50 features per year, not to mention hundreds of Movietone newsreels and short subjects.
Dancing Girls get the critical once-over from casting director Lou Schreiber and dance director Jack Haskell.
Under contract were some of the best writers,
3 more top-notch scribes, Sam Engel, Howard Ellis Smith, and Milton Sperling.
directors,
Howard Hawks putting Frederick March and June Lang through their paces.
and composers in the business.
Darrell F. Zanuck and William Getz welcome America's top tunesmith, Irving Berlin. Manpower, brain power, box office personalities, and the finest production plant in the world mean perfect pictures.
In 1941, 20th Century Fox released How Green Was My Valley, John Ford's stunningly crafted adaptation of Richard Llewellyn's best-selling novel. Starring Walter Pidgeon, Maureen O'Hara, and newcomer Roddy McDowell, it told the story of a Welsh mining family whose strong faith unites them despite numerous hardships.
I can't promise that he'll ever walk again.
Come, lad. You can walk. 2. Walk. There's a good lad.
I couldn't let you go without thanking you.
It's only my duty, girl.
No, it was more than duty.
How Green Was My Valley was an unpopular idea. The stockholders felt it was unwise to make a film to do with unions. It seemed to be a down idea. Maureen O'Hara was a charming, young, beautiful 18 or 19-year-old girl who was going to certainly be, a movie star, but there was no star. Zanuck trusted the story and made it into an extraordinary film. It was started on June the 9th and was over on August the 13th and was in the theater in late September and was a blockbuster.
The film went on to win 5 Oscars, including Best Director and Best Picture. But by now, the fortunes of Fox and the world were changing.
December 7th, 1941. A date which will live in infamy.
Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Americans could no longer avoid participation in what had become the Second World War.
Army and Navy recruiting stations are stormed by hosts of American youth.
Tens of thousands of would-be G.I. Joes and Janes rushed to enlistment centers. Men and women in uniform were everywhere, and Hollywood was no exception.
Motion picture personalities like Kay Francis and Myrna Loy preside over ceremony of coffee and sinkers in behalf of the sailors of our fleet in war.
While stars like Tyrone Power joined the armed services, the studio's newest sensation, Betty Grable, remained stateside to entertain the troops.
Thousands of troops at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, storm for autographs of Betty Grable.
I'll be marching to a love song while you're waiting for me. Each mile will melt away. Your smile will be all I see.
Betty, welcome to Command Performance. Thank you, Kay. And if my face is red, it's because I'm tickled pink to be here.
A veteran of numerous bit parts in mostly modest musicals, Betty Grable soared to stardom opposite Don Amici in Down Argentine Way.
You'll find your life will begin the very moment you're in Argentina. If you're romantic, senor, then you will surely adore Argentina. You'll be as gay as can be if you will learn to see like a Latin. For Mr. Soon as you learn, then you will never return to Manhattan.
With her shapely legs and peaches and cream complexion, Betty's talents seemed ideally suited for the kind of spirited musicals that Fox was famous for.
I took one look at you. Cupid took a good swing, and wham! I heard the birdies sing. Ooh, what a punch she threw. I was dreaming of spring, and wham! I heard the birdies sing.
In film after film, Betty played the wisecracking, no-nonsense girl of every soldier's dreams.
Hold this, will you, honey? I promised Bill I'd phone him. Can't he get along without you for 10 minutes? Yes, he can, but I don't want him to find it out.
When they look at me, my heart begins to float. Then it starts a rocking like a motorboat. Oh.
Nice voice.
Yeah.
And when a simple publicity photo was distributed to GIs around the world, she, along with Rita Hayworth, became one of the most popular pinups of all time.
Hey, Laurie, you promised me one.
It says the same on each of them. With love, Laurie.
Laurie.
Oh, hello. Here's the last one.
But Laurie, don't you remember? I'm the guy you became engaged to last night.
George, of course. You're my little pin-up girl. Honestly, you are. To me, you have the grace of an angel, the face of a movie star. She represented home and hope. She symbolized America and what they wanted to come back to, and they could fight hard enough, maybe they could live and get back to that. She was the girl next door, but she was the sexy, pretty thing next door, too. She was everything rolled up in one. That's what she gave the boys in the Second World War.
Whether signing autographs for love-starred servicemen or dancing till dawn at the Hollywood Canteen, Fox's female stars became heroines of the home front, performing countless dance steps.
You'll never know just how much I miss you.
Singing hundreds of songs.
You love me and I love you. The idea's old, but the method is new. Dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo-doo. Dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo.
And enduring numerous wardrobe, lighting, and makeup tests. All for the boys.
I wonder why does everybody look at me and then begin to talk about the Christmas tree. I hope that means that everyone is glad to see the lady in the tutti frutti hat.
Another of the studio's wartime secret weapons was Brazilian bombshell Carmen Miranda.
Carmen Miranda, divine, wonderful gal. When she was on, you were, lost, so, you just accepted it. You might as well take a nap.
But if I ever start to take it off,
She just took over.
for Johnny Smith, and he is very happy with the lady in the tutti frutti hat.
In her trademark turbans and platform shoes, this diminutive dynamo did more to boost Pan-American relations than a host of good neighbor policies.
In South American way.
Put him back. He's mine. We are going steadily. Why don't you hang a sign around his neck? Private property. I'll hang a rope around his neck and maybe I pull it.
Oh, impulsive. Impulsive.
Repulsive. Do you think she look any gooder?
As war raged throughout the world, Darryl Zanuck could not resist the opportunity to participate.
I am proud to be an officer in the Signal Corps. In this national crisis, when the efforts of all are turned to national defense, I can assure you that the motion picture industry is doing its full share. With our industry, it has been and it will always be America first, America last, and America always.
Taking a leave from Fox, he encouraged the studio to develop a string of films, each designed to encourage patriotism and to bolster the war effort.
How does the radio check?
Radio is okay.
Pilot to waist, over. All set back there?
Everything's okay.
Winning victory was very, very important. First place, we raised all that money for Army Air Force relief. It was a great propaganda arm.
Join the Air Force. Be a pilot, bombardier, navigator. Fly that fortress, fly that liberator. Get those wings, get those women. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What we really did was to tell the folks out there, look, these are the guys that are fighting in the skies. And this is how they got there.
Don't whisper it, pilot. Say it.
Yes, sir.
Forward. Hurt.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder.
That U-boat's got us outgunned. It'll blow us out of the water. Don't you think we ought to dive, sir?
Now, don't those guys get back here.
Come on, step on it.
Take it out, Captain. Crash diver. We'll take our chances.
It isn't so much dying. It's having to sit here and take it.
They're throwing everything at us but the kitchen stove.
That's the stove now.
To comfort grieving audiences enduring daily battlefield reports, inspirational films like The Song of Bernadette helped provide moral certainty. Directed by Henry King, the story of a peasant girl's unyielding faith displayed unusual subtlety and sophistication, earning Jennifer Jones an Academy Award for Best Actress.
Oh, come on, tell us. I saw a lady, and she was all in white. A lady? And she wore a blue girdle and had a golden rose on each foot. I've never seen anything in my life so beautiful.
Now, if the court were to decide that your lady represents a profitable business scheme, it would go very hard with you.
I have not accepted one thing, monsieur, because I knew the lady would not like it.
By now, the horrors of war and the prospect of peace were leading to a greater maturity in storytelling and diversity of subject matter.
Well, I'd find out. I'd do a lot of finding out before I'd risk hanging 3 men who might be innocent.
If it were only rustling, maybe, but with murder, no.
If you got any doubts, Tedley, I say let's call off this party. Take it back to the judge like Davies wants.
This is only slightly any of your business, my friend. Remember that?
Hanging's any man's business that's around.
You better watch out, McPherson, or you'll end up in a psychiatric ward. I don't think they've ever had a patient who fell in love with a corpse.
Directed by Otto Preminger and featuring a haunting score by David Raxon, Laura offered war-weary audiences a gripping detective story in the grand tradition of what later became known as film noir.
Laura considered me the wisest, the wittiest, the most interesting man she'd ever met. I was in complete accord with her on that point.
What are you doing here?
You're alive. You are Laura Hunt, aren't you?
Laura! It's Mark. Open the door.
Find us together, Laura. as we always have been, as we always should be, as we always will be.
It's you I want. Answer me, Jane, quickly. Say Edward, I'll marry you. Say it, Jane. Say it.
I want to read your face.
Read quickly. Say Edward, I'll marry you.
Edward, I'll marry you.
Lifeboat, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, reinforced Fox's commitment to socially conscious cinema.
He says he's not a captain or officer, just a crew member.
A crew member or skipper, he's German.
Well, a guy can't help being German if he's born a German, can he?
Neither can a snake help being a rattlesnake if he's born a rattlesnake. That don't make him a nightingale. Get him out of here.
Don't be silly, darling. He can't very well get off in the middle of the ocean, now can he?
Throw him off.
Have you gone out of your mind?
Throw the Nazi buzzard overboard.
That's out of the question. It's against the law.
Whose law? We're on our own here. We can make our own law.
In 1944, the tide of war had turned, and America was brimming with confidence and prosperity. Darryl Zanuck had returned to his studio, and 20th Century Fox was about to enter its golden age.
Attention, Mr. and Mrs. United States. I have just seen Wilson. This remarkable Technicolor motion picture is another achievement for 20th Century Fox. It is the high mark in the brilliant career of Darryl F. Zanuck.
Produced on the then lavish budget of $4 million, Wilson was intended as Darryl F. Zanuck's peace offering to the post-war world.
Vice President Wallace visits the 20th Century Fox studios in Hollywood, and their film producer, Darryl Zanuck, shows him a new Technicolor feature being made, Wilson.
We take our hats off to you, Mr. Wilson. Our hats are off to you.
They may call me a coward or anything else they wish. I won't be rushed into this war.
Oh, still. With the sword, we take our hats off to you.
Crowds in New York throng for one of the greatest of motion picture premieres. Excitement at the opening of Wilson.
Mr. Zanuck, I want to present you with this Look Magazine Award it's the Film Achievement Award for producing that fine picture, Wilson.
Although critically acclaimed and the recipient of 10 Academy Award nominations, the film was a box office disaster.
I can remember being on tour with Darryl when the dreaded Wilson was made.
Thank you for coming to see me.
It was chloroform.
Thank you very much.
It was endless.
Very much.
I saw it, I think, 14 times. You know, it was just...
The vast majority of Americans expect me to keep my head. I don't want them to say, why did Wilson have to move so fast?
Zanuck forgot his own lesson that in order to tell a story, you need a drama. And Wilson just didn't. It was a period piece, it was an artifact.
Stunned by the public indifference to Wilson, Zanuck took comfort in the success of a string of more modestly budgeted films which were often based on strong literary properties and proven box office formulas.
Mama, they're cutting the tree.
Papa loved that tree.
Oh, quit mooning over it. Got in the way of the washing. The tree ain't gonna put no pennies in the bank.
They didn't have any right to kill it, did they, Papa?
Oh, now, wait a minute. They didn't kill it. Why, they could cut that old tree right down to the ground, and a root would push up someplace else in the cement. You wait till spring, Prima Donna, and you'll see.
I just love you so much, Papa.
Your Majesty, I present new English governess, Mrs. Anna Owens.
You do not look like a scientific person for teaching of school. How old shall you be?
I am 150 years old, Your Majesty.
In what year were you born?
1712, Your Majesty.
How many grandchildren shall you have by now? How many? Ah, you do not answer that so quick. I make better questions than you make answers, hmm?
I got a warrant here for you and your sons. Charging the murder of James and Virgil Earp. Will you come on right in here, Marshal, and serve your warrant?
think I'm getting tired.
Take it easy. You don't want to give up when you've come so far.
It's a cramp. Alan, it's a cramp. Alan! Alan! Help me!
It was always the story for DFZ. Nothing was important as the story, not stars, not directors. It was always the story. He felt if you had a good story, all the rest would follow.
Darryl believed that you start with that material, that story, that script. That's where it starts. He was as much a model studio head as anybody that came down the pike. Great degree of creativity and knowledge about film and filmmaking. The model of a studio head.
Zanuck rarely came to a set, but he saw every frame of film. The dailies were his Bible, and he sent messages through the night to his directors. And they thought they were on the side of the angels if they did what he said. Darryl Zanuck would brook no interference. As far as he was concerned, it was a producer's business. And bear in mind, in the early days of the studios, directors did not participate in post-production. They shot a movie, and the movie was sent to the cutting department. And it was really Darryl and Barbara McLean, or Bill Reynolds, or some of these people who sat and helped fashion the movie.
After a screening, he would stand up and he would pace back and forth, talking about the film, but always with a cigar. He could go through it practically frame by frame after seeing it once. It was remarkable.
In 1947, Zanuck's management style was parodied, with his permission, of course, in this rather unusual promotional film for the studio's newest release.
Oh, no. That's no good. Turn it off. Stop it. Turn it off. That won't work. It's no good. What do you make a trailer for? To give the public an idea of what kind of a picture to expect. But, boss, hilarious, romantic, tender, exciting. Make up your minds. It can't be all of those things.
Although the part of the studio executive was played by a Fox contract player, it wasn't difficult for audiences to identify Zanuck as the object of the parody.
You've got to decide what kind of a picture this is. Is it a romantic love story? Is it an exciting thriller? Is it a hilarious comedy? Make up your minds. Now go to work and fix it up.
But the make-believe mogul needn't have worried. Miracle on 34th Street went on to become one of Fox's biggest hits of the year.
I intend to prove that Mr. Kringle is Santa Claus.
I'm Santa Claus. Oh, you don't believe that, do you? Oh, go ahead, pull it.
Don't move.
Released the same year as Miracle on 34th Street, Kiss of Death starred Victor Mature as an ex-con who tries desperately to go straight, and newcomer Richard Widmark as his psychotic nemesis, Tommy Udo.
I squealed on you. You got a right to be sore.
You got a wife and kids, ain't you, pal?
I'm telling you, lay off of them.
In Nightmare Alley, matinee idol Tyrone Power played the part of a sideshow con man and gave one of the grittiest and best performances of his career.
I see fields of grass and rolling hills and a boy. A dog is with him.
Hey, see how easy it is to hook 'em? Stock reading fits anybody. Never misses.
You mean there is some difference between Jews and Christians? Same face, same eyes, same nose, same suit, same everything. Here, take my hand. Feel it. Same flesh as yours, isn't it?
Written by Moss Hart and directed by Ilya Kazan, Gentleman's Agreement was a tough, uncompromising condemnation of post-war anti-Semitism.
Look, I'm Jewish, and you don't take Jews. That's it, isn't it?
I never said that.
If you don't accept Jews, say so.
Don't raise your voice to me, Mr. Green. You speak a little more quietly, please.
Do you or don't you?
Mr. Green, I'm a very busy man. Now, if you want me to phone for a cab or room at the Brewster, I'll do so. Otherwise...
Otherwise what?
Considering the fact that Zanuck was the only studio head at the time, as far as I know, who was not Jewish, it's interesting that he was the one who went out and made Gentleman's Agreement.
The film went on to win 3 Oscars, including the studio's 3rd for Best Picture.
I'm a Negro. I can't forget it and I can't deny it. I can't pretend to be anything else. I don't want to be anything else.
Pinky, also directed by Kazan and written by veteran screenwriters Philip Dunn and Dudley Nichols, was a searing indictment of racial bigotry.
Now, if she even so much as thought of threatening you, we want to know about it. Or if she give you any of her impudence.
Shut up, girl. Oh, excuse me, sir, but why are you 2 white men mamming her? She's nothing but a low-down colored gal. Tried to steal my man. Stop.
You heard what she said. He's got to slap her down, unless it's true.
Yes, it's true. I'm colored. My grandmother's Mrs. Dicey Johnson.
Mrs. Dicey Johnson. I ought to slap them both down, Chief.
Now, hold it.
The Snake Pit, starring Olivia de Havilland, examined the horrors of mental institutions and led to badly needed reforms.
Here I was among all those people, and at the same time, I felt as if I were looking at them from someplace far away. The whole place seemed to me like a deep hole, and the people down in it like snakes.
What compelled Zanuck to make message pictures, Pinky about miscegenation, The Snake Pit about mental illness, Gentleman's Agreement about anti-Semitism, was that he was a fierce, gutsy man who did not know the meaning of fear.
And when it came to making these socially conscious movies, though he felt strongly about many of the issues that he took up, he was wise enough to know that one can tell a good story but also be socially conscious.
Well, there isn't too much you can determine from the outside of a cadaver.
There is the possibility that I killed him, isn't there?
Don't be a fool.
That I was careless in the spinal tap. That his brother's Negro baiting got me down.
I don't want to ever hear you say anything like that again.
In just 10 years, Darryl F. Zanuck had transformed Fox from a struggling studio on the brink of bankruptcy to a force to be reckoned with.
What's the matter? What happened?
Why, Roddy?
Mrs. King, throughout this grisly meal, your son has been pelting me with cereal. I have taught him an object lesson, and as you will observe, he doesn't like it. I guarantee that he will never throw cereal at me or anyone else again, ever.
Mr. Belvedere, consider yourself hired.
Why do you haunt?
Because I have plans for my house, which don't include a pack of strangers barging in and making themselves at home.
Then you were trying to frighten me away.
You call that trying? I'd barely started.
I want to tell you some things about this case you don't know. I went into this thing believing nothing. I was skeptical. I figured Wheatcheck is using his mother to spring him. But I've changed my mind.
The purpose of radio writing, as far as I can see, is to prove to the masses that a deodorant can bring happiness, a mouthwash guarantee success, and a laxative attract romance.
Well, there's nothing to be so upset about. Good heavens, I merely had a tale.
You merely had a what? I give you my solemn word, August, if I don't regain control of myself in a few minutes, concert or no concert, I'll take this candelabrum and I'll beat that walnut you used for a head into a nut burger, I believe they're called.
By now, 20th Century Fox had become a haven for writers, directors, and actors who wanted to perform their very best work.
Hey, did you hear that? I must look pretty good.
Don't be silly. That was for me.
For you?
Of course.
I ought to punch him in the nose.
Henry, remember you're a lady.
Watch it, Cobb. They're heading for the high squadron. Here they come. 12 o'clock high. Cut across and get back in formation.
That is Roger.
Bail out, Joe. Bail out.
You're not much of a bargain, you know. You're conceited and thoughtless and messy.
Everybody can't be Gregory Peck.
But perhaps nowhere was the studio's creative talent more in evidence than in All About Eve.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Written and directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz,
Cut, print it. What happened to the next reel?
the film featured one of the most literate scripts and some of the finest actors ever presented.
Can't believe my ears.
A dull cliche.
There are particular aspects of my life to which I would like to maintain sole and exclusive rights and privileges.
For instance, what?
For instance, you.
You remember Miss Caswell?
I do not. How do you do?
We've never met. Maybe that's why.
Miss Caswell is an actress, a graduate of the Copacabana School of Dramatic Art.
Funny business, a woman's career. The things you drop on your way up the ladder so you can move faster. You forget you'll need them again when you get back to being a woman.
I am happy to announce that the winner is All About Eve.
All About Eve went on to earn a record 14 Academy Award nominations, winning 6, including the studio's 4th for Best Picture.
Zanuck is impatient. He wants me. He needs me.
Zanuck, what are you two lovers?
But as a new decade dawned, Hollywood and 20th Century Fox faced a new challenge: television.
Ladies and gentlemen, this break in our motion picture is made out of respect for the TV fans in our audience who are accustomed to constant interruptions in their programs for messages from sponsors.
Although the means to capture electronic images had been available for some time, it was in the 1950s that the new medium of television really came into its own.
TV is a remarkable invention. You can sit there in your easy chair with your shoes off and a can of beer, watching that wonderful, clear picture coming into your home, bringing culture and entertainment to you and your family.
Almost overnight, antennas sprouted like weeds across the national landscape, and not since the advent of sound had a new technology sent studio chiefs into such a panic.
Today, we are confronted with the greatest challenge in the history of our business and the greatest challenge to our company. It is a challenge for survival. Our engineers are hard at work in developing new technical advancements in the motion picture industry.
I was playing croquet one Sunday at Palm Springs. On my croquet court, we have a goldfish fountain. Looking down at the goldfish, I noticed the sense of depth. Here truly was 3 dimension. It gave me an idea.
But if Zanuck couldn't compete with the small black and white pictures now available in living rooms, his response was to drastically change the size and shape of things to come.
At a laboratory in Nice, France, famed Sorbonne optical scientist Henri Chrétien demonstrates the anamorphoscopic lens for the CinemaScope system, a revolutionary development. CinemaScope throws realistic images on a screen 2.5 times larger than the present screen with a 3rd-dimensional illusion, audience participation, and greater enjoyment. In acquiring it, 20th Century Fox this week changed its entire production technique for all of its principal pictures and started the production of Lloyd C. Douglas's famed story, The Robe, in CinemaScope.
The Robe, from one of the greatest novels of all time, the most inspired story of love and devotion, faith and spectacle that has ever come to life on the screen. Brought to you through the miracle of CinemaScope, in all its power and drama, in all its scope and magnificence. You see more because there is more on the film to see.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
The Robe offered viewers an experience unlike anything they had seen before.
We have a large screen that gives a semicircle around the theater, and you have the feeling that you are in the picture. The picture is around you. You have an opportunity to participate in the drama. And to me, that is really and truly a new dimension, because it's a new form of entertainment. It isn't just depth, it puts you into the drama.
If there's nothing left for men to hope for but chains and hunger, then my king will march forward to right those wrongs. Not tomorrow, sire, but it will come.
I think the big screen, widescreen films helped slow down the impact of television, get something to get them out to the movie houses again, away from the television set.
Now, for the first time, CinemaScope's amazing anamorphic lens engulfs you in the panoramic range of an underwater world you have never been part of before.
But the grandeur of Fox's new widescreen wonders came at a price. Gone were the kinds of intimate and socially responsible films the company had been famous for. Replacing them were a string of biblical epics and costume dramas. They offered spectacular feasts for the eye, but too often, little else.
Silence! I wish to see the two prisoners you spoke of.
Sinaway, a physician, the son of Senmut. Horemheb, the son of a cheesemaker.
For a cheesemaker, he has bold eyes.
All right. Put down your weapons if you want me alive.
Blast you, boy, you ran off.
I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry, my beef bones. You broke your word, ran off without a by your leave.
I was a fool.
Don't take the words out of my mouth. You're a Viking fool.
Movies were different now. The invention of the widest screen, the need for huge pictures to fill that screen. What it allowed them to do was to bring in the scenery.
Go on, get him!
Scenery became terribly important in the 1950s to create a sort of special event out of films.
Early television was killing the movie business. People said, why go to movies when we can see all this entertainment at home for free?
Silence!
Sire, the guards want a hero. Listen to them.
Christian, do you renounce your false god, this king of an invisible kingdom?
There is no other king but Caesar.
The mandate I got from Zanuck at that time, he said, David, I want stories with width, not depth. And we got stories with width and not depth.
Notable exceptions to Darrell's directive appeared in the form of a string of musicals by Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II. Rodgers and Hammerstein had previously collaborated with Zanuck on the 1945 musical version of State Fair. But now, Broadway's biggest composers were trusting Fox to adapt their stage masterpieces for the widescreen.
June is busting out all over the Meadow and the hill.
I wonder what it'd be like.
If you loved me?
If I loved you, time and again I would try to say all I'd want you to know.
If I loved you, words wouldn't come in an easy way. Round in circles I'd go, getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed Suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day.
Some enchanted evening when you find your true love.
I'm Dick Rogers.
I'm Oscar Hammerstein. We're glad that 20th Century Fox have given us this chance to tell you how enthusiastic we are about the coming production of South Pacific. It'll be directed by Josh Logan, who staged the play when it was first done.
Mitzi Gaynor will play the young American nurse. Rosanna Brazzi will play the French planter with whom she has her enchanted evening.
They look wonderful to us. We hope you like them.
Come.
Opulent sets, exotic locations, and sophisticated storylines.
Who is king here? You are my servant.
No, Your Majesty, that is not true. I am most certainly not your servant.
These elements were all trademarks of the Rogers and Hammerstein films, films that helped usher in a new era for the Fox musical.
Whenever I dance with the girl I love, my head goes round and round. When she is close to me, I can't stay on the ground.
An era that thrilled to the swiveling hips of Elvis Presley.
Let me have another dance with you.
The 1950s also witnessed the emergence of another studio tradition, science fiction.
You saw the fly? Where?
In the garden.
Fox's first foray into the genre was actually produced in 1930. This rather curious film envisioned what New York might look like in 1980.
Someone's at the door. See who it is.
I have built a plane that will make the trip to Mars and return.
Take a look at it, Artie. It's a sight no one's ever seen before.
We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin. A large object traveling at supersonic speed is headed over the North Atlantic toward the east coast of the United States.
But by the 1950s, the atomic age brought threats of technology run amok, and the very real possibility that we might not be alone.
We have come to visit you in peace.
Directed by Robert Wise, The Day the Earth Stood Still told the story of Klaatu, a benevolent visitor from another planet, played by Michael Rennie.
We shall be here for a little while. You see, the electricity's been neutralized all over the world.
His mission? To warn Earth against the dangers of nuclear warfare.
Soon, one of your nations will apply atomic energy to spaceships. That will create a threat to the peace and security of other planets. That, of course, we cannot tolerate.
Gordon, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
But rampaging robots were still no match for the alien technology that had invaded more than 31 million American homes by the middle of the decade.
Roll the camera.
Speed.
In an effort to embrace the inevitable, 20th Century Fox became one of the first major Hollywood studios to channel its vast production resources into television. In 1955, they produced 20th Century Fox Hour of Stars, a bi-weekly anthology series.
What's your name, little girl?
Susan Walker, what's your name?
Mine. Kris Kringle. I'm Santa Claus. You don't believe that, do you? Go on, pull up.
See?
What are you doing here? Who are you?
You're alive.
With sets, backdrops, and even whole plots recycled from their motion pictures.
So it was Lidecker after all.
The series converted studio classics into small screen sensations.
Laura! Laura!
Laura, I love you. In life, I could not have you. In death, you will be mine forever.
You're all right.
Ooh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
Television's rapidly growing popularity couldn't compete with Fox's most consistent crowd pleaser, sex.
Oh, here comes another one.
And there was no greater or more potent purveyor of that commodity than Marilyn Monroe. Under contract to Fox since 1946, the former model and pin-up girl was nearly cut out of her first film appearance in Scudda-Hoo, Scudda-Hay, starring June Haber and Natalie Wood.
Go wait in the car. Hi, Red. Oh, hi, Betty.
That's Marilyn over there on the left, coming down the steps. Fortunately, she fared better in a series of modestly budgeted
How dare you?
but highly entertaining comedies.
You too!
Good morning. Aren't you here early?
Oh, yes. Mr. Oxley's been complaining about my punctuation, so I'm careful to get here before 9. Honey, your father's been so divine with me that sometimes even I feel like calling him Daddy.
But when producer Charles Brackett decided to cast her in the taut suspense thriller Niagara, Fox realized that the famous falls weren't the film's only scenic wonder.
Get out the fire hose. You're getting all dressed up to go out and buy tickets.
I'm meeting somebody. Just anybody handy, as long as he's a man. How about the ticket seller himself? I could grab him on my way out, or one of the kids with a phonograph. Anybody suits me.
The film made Marilyn Monroe a star.
Another handsome trophy to add to her ever-growing collection.
In recognition of your sensational rise to stardom.
It's a great thrill. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zanuck. And my thanks to Look magazine.
Zanuck finally took notice.
You do wear it on your head. I just love finding new places to wear diamonds.
A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat or help you at the automat.
Cast as Lorelei Lee in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the musical proved that Monroe could more than measure up to her co-star, Jane Russell.
We're just two little girls from Little Rock. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks. But the gentlemen friends who used to call, they never did seem to mind at all. They came to the wrong side of the tracks.
This is your television premiere, isn't it, Marilyn?
That's right. It feels almost like making pictures.
Yeah. Listen, I want to tell you something. Up to this time, television has been a medium, but now I say it's well done.
By now, Marilyn was Fox's hottest blonde since Betty Grable.
Brewster talks about is what a horrible family he's got. But I'll say this for him. We haven't ordered anything yet under $5 a portion.
If there's anything left over, don't forget to tell the waiter you want to take it home for the dog.
And when teamed with Monroe in How to Marry a Millionaire, the easygoing Grable was reported to have said, "I've had mine, honey. Now go get yours." And get it, she did.
Having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave.
In Irving Berlin's There's No Business Like Show Business, she proved that she could hold her own opposite Ethel Merman, Dan Daly, Mitzi Gaynor, and Donald O'Connor.
I certainly can.
She braved raging rapids with Robert Mitchum in River of No Return.
You're not such a mean person in spite of yourself. Some other time and some other place, you might have even have gotten along.
Now, what's all this? What kind of an act is this?
I'm a performer, didn't you know? Songs and dances.
I want the title to something vital that I can throw my fancies around.
Hi.
She even fended off an amorous Tom Ewell in The 7-Year Itch, directed by Billy Wilder.
Now I'm going to take you in my arms and kiss you. Very quickly and very hard.
Hey, wait a minute! What happened? I kind of lost track.
I don't know. Well, this is terrible. There's nothing I can say except that I'm terribly sorry. Nothing like this ever happened to me before in all of my life.
Honest? Happens to me all the time.
We were sitting one time at a coffee place, and they were putting up a huge picture of her from The 7-Year Itch. And she looked up and she said, "You see, that's all they think of me. That's what they think of me."
Look where I'm going. Where? Hollywood and Vine. Look, straight as an arrow. Raver Gulch. Hollywood and Vine.
What happens when you get there?
What happens, honey? You get discovered, you get tested with options and everything. And you get treated with a little respect, too.
In 1956, Monroe got one of her few chances to prove herself a serious actress as Cherie, the lonely torch singer, in Bus Stop.
That old black magic has me in its spell.
I think she could relate to that character very strongly and knew that character very well. She went for broke in it, and I think she did probably some of her strongest acting in that film.
I just can't lie to you. And I can't marry you, and I ain't going to Montana with you. And goodbye forever.
Cherry, wait a sec. Cherry, wait up, Cherry!
You ain't got the manners I gave a monkey! I hate you, and I despise you! And give me back my tail!
She was using her own real emotions for the first time. And I think that's what made the big marcation between her as a very, very good musical comedy performer and an interesting personality and a real actress, because she was using her own inner life.
Jerry, it wasn't right of me to do what I did to you, treating you that way, dragging you on the bus and trying to make you marry me whether you wanted to or not. Do you think you can ever forgive me?
I guess I've been treated worse in my life. But what can I do? I hear your name, and I'm a flame. A flame with a burning desire that only your kiss can put out the fire.
But Monroe wasn't the only blonde on Fox's block. Jane Mansfield proved herself more than willing to inherit roles that the temperamental Monroe was starting to turn down.
The girl can't help it, she was born to please. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. She's got a bigger maid to squeeze. Can't help it, the girl can't help it. I want you to kindly be aware, the girl can't help it, the girl can't help it.
You got 6 weeks to have her a star. You know, the first thing, 6 weeks? Oh, easy, Fats, it takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
She ain't Rome. What we're talking about is already built.
Now, when you see that the photographers are ready to take our picture, you kiss my hand and work your way up my arm.
Huh? How far up?
Well, as far as you can go, silly. Darling, when you get to the shoulder, you have to kiss me on the lips.
Another actress who was groomed as a possible successor to Monroe was Sherry North, seen here opposite Betty Grable in How to Be Very, Very Popular.
How delightfully American.
Unfortunately, the film wasn't very popular with audiences, and Grable declared it her last film. It seemed Hollywood's glory days were fading. A series of Supreme Court decisions in the 1940s had stripped the big studios of their profitable theater chains. And an industry used to having complete control over writers, directors, and stars now had to make way for the town's new bosses, the independent producers.
But I'm sure you'll forgive my concentration today on A Farewell to Arms. We're here deep in the Alps, and we'll now show you a few scenes made on our very first day. We shall have fantastic spectacle against backgrounds never before seen on the screen. We have a wonderful cast headed by those great and popular award winners Rock Hudson, Jennifer Jones, and Vittorio De Sica.
For the first time in Hollywood history, stars were free to work where they chose. Happily, many of them chose to work at Fox.
I don't smoke. I only drink champagne when I'm lucky enough to get it. My hair is naturally natural. I live alone, and so do you.
How do you know that?
Because you're wearing one brown sock and one black one.
You're right.
You have a date, my beloved, July the 1st at 5 o'clock. But you don't say where.
Will you name the place and I'll obey?
I don't know. I can't think. How about the top of the Empire State Building?
Oh, yes, that's perfect. Hurry. Here you are. Keep the change.
What's the rush, lady?
I'm going to be married, and I want you to be the first to congratulate me. Thank you.
Marriage is something to rush to.
If it had to happen to one of us, why did it have to be you?
Oh. It was nobody's fault but my own. I was looking up. It was the nearest thing to heaven. You were there.
Are you all right? Yes. And if it is better for you not to believe. You are ill. No. I cough only because I'm a little frightened. Say that again. That I cough when I'm frightened? When you were a little girl, you coughed when you were frightened. Marion Kaya. Marion Kaya.
I've never seen you smoke.
I rarely do.
You still think we have no destiny together?
I have decided one thing that you must decide. For you are stronger than I am.
No, I think you're the strong one.
Then you are wrong. For you are gentle. And there's nothing stronger in the world than gentleness.
But despite his continued success, Darryl Zanuck felt beleaguered by frequent battles with his bosses in New York. He began to lose interest in the company he'd founded more than 2 decades before.
He had no more use for Hollywood. He was tired of the Saturday night parties at Jack Warner's house, as he used to say. He suffered extreme burnout. He said, you know, I'm tired of it. I want a life.
Joining the ranks of the independent producers, Zanuck relocated to Paris with plans to produce a series of films.
I'm speaking to you now from a London studio. Last week in Paris, we photographed the first scenes of Ernest Hemingway's great novel, The Sun Also Rises. It will have an all-star cast. Tyrone Power as Jake Barnes. Ava Gardner as Brett Ashley. Errol Flynn as Mike Campbell.
Oh, ole!
Of course I'm all right. Who asked you to help?
Yeah, we were doing fine till you showed up.
Darryl Zanuck had now proved he could survive without Fox. But a greater question remained. Could 20th Century Fox survive without Darryl Zanuck?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Now under the supervision of Fox President Spiro Skouras and new production chief Buddy Adler, 20th Century Fox announced an impressive and diverse slate of films for 1957.
As I hope to show you, we have here the greatest lineup of proven properties any studio has offered to exhibitors.
One of the studio's most significant offerings was Peyton Place.
Would you kiss me, Norman?
Based on Grace Metalius's scorching bestseller about a scandal-ridden small town.
Aren't you afraid people will think you're a little fast?
Allison, according to my philosophy, what other people think will not pay the rent. So if you're accused of being fast, you might as well run. That way you get to all the good things first.
Starring Lana Turner, Hope Lang, and an all-star cast, the film pushed the boundaries of screen censorship with frank discussions about sex,
Not that way.
rape, and incest.
Lucas!
Never had nothing I ever wanted. Never had a beautiful woman.
Never been so humiliated and disgusted. Allison! Come back here immediately. Listen, Mother, if you keep this up someday, I will do what you keep accusing me of. I wouldn't doubt it. You're just like your father about sex. Don't you say things about my father. He was a wonderful man. Wonderful. And fine and good to you, and that's what you told me, so don't blame him for anything. Wonderful and fine and good. That's what I told you? Well, I lied. I lied about him because I was ashamed of him and of myself. Well, then why did you marry him? I didn't. And he didn't marry me because he already had a wife. No. He had a wife. No.
Released that same year, The Three Faces of Eve starred Joanne Woodward in a true story of a woman with multiple personalities. It was a performance that would earn her the year's Best Actress Academy Award.
Happened, Jane? Under the house.
She made me kiss her. She made me kiss her.
Joanne Woodward quickly distinguished herself among a new generation of 20th Century Fox stars, a generation that included Tony Randall, David Hedison, Tony Franciosa, and Pat Boone.
Next.
Woodward's next film, The Long Hot Summer, teamed her with the man who would become her lifelong co-star, Paul Newman.
You mean your friend would not like it if we went off together? The idea you and me just wouldn't go down, would it?
I wish to discuss him with you.
Why not? I respect him. I admire his manners, and I admire the speeches he makes, and I admire the big house he lives in. But if you're saving it all for him, honey,
You got your account in the wrong bank.
You can leave any time now.
Don't ask me twice.
By the end of the 1950s, 20th Century Fox's management team had successfully built on the Zanuck tradition of producing a wide variety of quality films.
Don't you know that when you became a soldier, you contracted for killing in all its forms?
I do not think it possible to remake this world from the basement of a dirty little police station.
Hey! Hey, you guys! Cut it out! Cut it out!
You know, Dr. Freud would say I'm punishing myself because I'm staying out of combat.
Well, then get into it. Stop feeling so guilty.
You'd better be guilty than dead.
You would too, wouldn't you?
Someone now knows that we're up here hiding.
It's a thief.
He'll say to the Gestapo, if you let me off, I'll show you where some Jews are hiding. That's what I think.
Oh,
He's right.
Mother, let's get out of here. We can't stay here now.
Please, let's go.
Go? Where?
Yes, where?
Around the feast we gather in complete jubilation. Happiest of seasons now is here. Many are the reasons for good cheer. Together, together.
Together. Please, Artie. I'll do anything you say.
Anything? I want to do something really dangerous.
But together, Artie.
There is no other justice, because never before in the history of this city has such a vile, brutal, premeditated murder been committed.
They say you can only get justice by shedding their last drop of blood. Isn't a lifetime behind prison bars enough for this mad act? If you hang these boys, it will mean that in this land of ours, a court of law could not help but bow down to public opinion.
Don't you see what's at stake here? The ultimate aim of all science, to penetrate the unknown. Do you realize we know less about the Earth we live on than about the stars and the galaxies of outer space? The greatest mystery is right here, right under our feet.
See? I told you, they never arrest the waiters.
You're Minnesota Fats, aren't you? You know, they say Minnesota Fats is the best in the country out where I come from. Is that a fact? Fats, let you and I shoot a game of straight pool. $100? Let's make it $200 a game. Now I know why they call you Fast Eddie. Poor boy.
But as a new decade dawned, Fox's confidence seemed to give way to complacency.
Fly sky high on the witch's broomstick. Join Prince Charming as he battles the Wicked Queen to rescue Snow White. Also starring the world's clown princes of comedy, the Three Stooges, as her hilarious defenders. Our state fair is a great state fair.
The variety was there, but too often the quality wasn't.
I'll kill you, alligator man! Just like I'd kill any four-legged gator!
After making a number of films for rival studios, Marilyn Monroe was lured back to Fox for Something's Gotta Give, a contemporary remake of My Favorite Wife, with Marilyn cast as a shipwrecked woman who returns to her family after 5 years, only to find she has been declared legally dead.
A man's wife spends 5 years on an island with a strange man,
Would you like it any better if I knew him?
and it slips her mind.
Well, I was going to tell you, but I know how upset you get about little things.
495.
But the years of pills and emotional instability had taken their toll.
All right, camera.
In the first 24 days of shooting, Monroe only showed up for work 13 times. When she did, she was often late or unprepared.
All you can think about is the way I behaved with this poor little... Okay.
With this poor little fly.
Come on, Jack, come on, put your feet up. Speak, speak.
I used to come here a long time ago.
Even under the experienced direction of George Cukor, Something's Gotta Give had become a confused jumble of pieces that wouldn't fit.
It takes me 2 seconds. It's taken... You've had 2 days. Sorry, George, but we can do it.
625.
Wait a minute. Sorry.
365.
Can we start again?
Cut it.
Hopelessly over budget and over schedule, the film was ordered shut down. Marilyn Monroe was fired. The film was never finished. And just 2 months later, 20th Century Fox's brightest star was found dead of a drug overdose. In an era when films like Ben-Hur meant big box office, Fox executives were desperate to produce a surefire hit.
Mr. Skouras said in his accent, "Dave, you need some big pictures." So I went through the book of movies that had been produced by 20th Century Fox over its long history.
Reaching all the way back to the days of Theda Bara, they found one, or so they hoped, in the story of the infamous Queen of the Nile, Cleopatra. Although originally planned as a $3 million production to be filmed in England, Cleopatra quickly escalated into what was to become the biggest and most expensive film in the history of motion pictures. After building elaborate sets at the Pinewood Studios, bad weather resulted in costly delays. Complicating matters was the near-fatal illness of actress Elizabeth Taylor, who, shortly after agreeing to play the Egyptian queen for the unprecedented sum of $1 million, was stricken with pneumonia.
Back in the United States after her brush with death in London, Elizabeth Taylor is carried from her plane in a wheelchair.
Inheriting the troubled production from director Ruben Mamoulian, veteran filmmaker Joseph L. Mankiewicz undertook a radical salvage effort. Moving the production to Rome and casting Rex Harrison as Julius Caesar and Richard Burton as Mark Antony, the Oscar-winning director of All About Eve and A Letter to Three Wives began rewriting the script on a daily basis. But what Mankiewicz couldn't have predicted were the enormous logistical problems that would plague his Italian-based production. Making matters worse was the field day the scandal-seeking press was having over the extramarital love affair between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. As the now 6-hour saga neared completion, costs had soared to more than $40 million.
People grew old on that set. You know, they got their Social Security before we wrapped.
Mankiewicz pleaded with Fox to accept his strategy of releasing Cleopatra as 2 3-hour films. But by now, studio executives were embroiled in a battle more fierce than any fought by Julius Caesar. This time, they had to take on Darryl Zanuck.
3 million men penned up on this island, all over England and staging areas like this. We're on the threshold of the most crucial day of our times.
Darryl Zanuck had wanted to make an epic film about the Allied landing in Normandy ever since he had witnessed the event firsthand.
Gentlemen, the day we've been waiting for has arrived. Invasion!
Purchasing the rights to Cornelius Ryan's book on the subject, The Longest Day would be Zanuck's 6th independent production since leaving Fox.
The Longest Day was probably the most important film to Darryl, because he was able to tell what he thought was one of the most important stories of the 20th century.
Come on, move up!
It was his way of approaching what he thought was one of the major events of his lifetime. He made it his story. It became Darryl Zanuck's The Longest Day. And he did it in a rather spectacular way.
As best as I can figure it, we're starting the war from right here.
The ex-mogul assembled an all-star international cast that included many former 20th Century Fox stars.
I made it. Did you see me get those two guys?
One did not anticipate the scope of the film. That whole great sweeping shot on the beach. The concept was so gigantic, and he fulfilled it.
Go!
The film was totally successful because inside the huge panorama of it, the intimacy wasn't lost.
Zanuck was recording history in The Longest Day, and it was a yeoman job. Many, many different directors and actors from all countries, and he put it all together. The genius of Darryl Zanuck was to really put this all together. I mean, he was a producer.
With Zanuck supervising every detail of the film's mammoth production, The Longest Day would be his masterpiece. But for debt-plagued 20th Century Fox, the World War II saga was viewed as a surefire source of quick cash. The budget for Cleopatra had continued to swell, and persistent production delays threatened to make it more than twice as expensive as any film in history. When Fox president Spiros Skouras announced plans to rush The Longest Day into release, and at bargain ticket prices, Zanuck had had enough.
You can't give the enemy a break. Send them to hell.
Traveling to New York, he confronted the studio's board of directors.
His return was largely to ensure the success of The Longest Day, to make sure that this movie, which he loved so much, got its release as he wanted to have it released.
After a heated and impassioned exchange, Skouras was out and Zanuck was back, this time as chairman of the board.
It was one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen in my life. He went to the board. He was a large stockholder, but minuscule compared to all of the outstanding shares. So he hit them on an emotional level as the founder of the company and absolutely attacked them one by one. And after a couple of hours of this tirade, they were totally wiped out, actually, and he took over the company, and it was as simple as that.
Naming his son Richard as head of production, Darryl took on the enormous task of putting his studio back on track. The first order of business was the release of The Longest Day.
In the most unusual tribute ever paid a motion picture, the City of Light illuminates its enchanting Trocadero Gardens to celebrate the world premiere of The Longest Day. The Arts and Society contingent stormed to the gala, headed by Mel Ferrer and Audrey Hepburn. From Hollywood, here's Robert Wagner.
I was with him the night of the premiere, and I was sitting right next to him in Paris. He had Edith Piaf singing from the Eiffel Tower. What a night. What a showman he was.
But still more extraordinary is this. The French title for The Longest Day emblazons the tower. Yes, Parisian history is made tonight. As the Broadway tribute to Mr. Zanuck and The Longest Day runs into a second day, rain fails to dampen the spirits of the New Yorkers wishing to pay homage to the epical motion picture on the occasion of its world premiere. The group from the cast of The Longest Day is joined by Henry Fonda, another of the 42 international stars of the fascinating film. The tribute to Mr. Zanuck carries over to Broadway before the preview of the stirring film. A kaleidoscope of tramping feet, that monopolizes the Great White Way for the full mile from Times Square to Columbus Circle.
With the success of his masterpiece assured, Zanuck set about taking control of Cleopatra. Impatient with what he felt was becoming a 6-hour soap opera, he refused to release the film in 2 parts. After a heated confrontation with Mankiewicz, he took control of the production.
The smoke of burning Roman dead is just as black, and the stink no less.
Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra, Siren of the Nile. Her stunning beauty and notorious intrigue turned the tide of civilization.
You will kneel.
I will what?
On your knees.
You dare ask the proconsul of Rome?
I asked it of Julius Caesar. I demand it of you.
Slashing Cleopatra's running time to a still epic 4 hours, Zanuck mounted an aggressive marketing campaign in a desperate effort to make the best of what had become a disastrous situation.
The Rivoli Theater in New York has presented to 20th Century Fox Corporation a certified check, which is the highest sum of money ever paid for any attraction.
A $1,250,000 gesture of faith that Cleopatra will be an all-time favorite.
The picture is booked for mid-June, the Rivoli in New York, and there are no seats available for the first 4 months.
Although it would earn an impressive $26 million at the box office, at a time when the average ticket sold for less than $1, nothing could make Cleopatra profitable. And despite fine performances from Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, and Rex Harrison, and 5 Academy Awards, the film would be unfairly branded as one of the biggest flops in Hollywood history.
Eventually, the picture made $5.5 million, but our studio was missing. Because of Cleopatra, all the cash was going out. It was virtually bankrupt.
Not since the Depression days of William Fox had the studio faced such a grim financial future. And although the company's television division was thriving, 20th Century Fox was threatened with bankruptcy.
20th Century Fox was closed down. We literally let everybody go, everyone. Those that were left were huddled into a little bungalow right across from the administration building. The whole studio operated out of that one building. Most of the betting in town was that 20th Century Fox would never open again.
In a last-ditch effort to save the company he had founded nearly 30 years before, Darryl Zanuck pulled the plug on nearly every film in development. He also sold off acres of prime studio real estate and urged son Richard and production executive David Brown to comb the shelves for worthwhile properties.
A world-acclaimed novel, now an extraordinary motion picture. Zorba the Greek is Zorba the Great. Starring Anthony Quinn, Best Actor of the Year, says the Saturday Review.
Boss, why did God give us hands? To grab. Well, grab.
The winners of 5 prior Academy Awards and 21 Academy nominations now bring you...
Hush, hush, sweet Charlotte. Charlotte, don't you cry.
Yes, I told Jewel. And I told your father, too. Why wouldn't I tell him that his pure, darling little girl was having a dirty little affair with a married man? You're a vile, sorry little tramp! How was I to know it would end in murder?
2 great stars clash. in Irving Stone's turbulent masterpiece.
Michelangelo will paint the ceiling. He will paint it or he will hang. I will not obey you. Will not. Did I hear you correctly? Will not. Yes. I'll destroy it first with my own hands.
But a handful of strong films were not enough. Fox needed a blockbuster. What they found was The Sound of Music.
They had owned The Sound of Music for 4 or 5 years, and they had paid what was then the highest price ever paid for a Broadway show, $1,250,000.
Nobody believed Fox was even in a position to make The Sound of Music. When Darrow came back with Richard Zanuck, they put The Sound of Music into production.
We were considered dead. And then we hit him with The Sound of Music, which had just been laying there on the shelf. We were able to reestablish ourselves as a force in the business and a force to be reckoned with.
The hills are alive with the sound of music, with songs they have sung for 1,000 years. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Doe,
A deer, a female deer. Ray, a drop of golden sun. Me, a name I call myself. Far, a long, long way to run.
With lilting and inspirational songs by Rodgers and Hammerstein, a script by Academy Award-winning screenwriter Ernest Lehman, skillful direction by Robert Wise, and outstanding performances by Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, everything seemed in place to help guarantee that The Sound of Music would be a hit.
Quiet, please. Already rolling. Action.
With a budget of $8 million and a production schedule that would take the cast to Austria for nearly 3 months of location shooting, The Sound of Music was Fox's biggest and riskiest production since Cleopatra.
together.
When you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything.
As studio executives held their breath, The Sound of Music was released to rapturous reviews and phenomenal box office success.
We knew we had a lovely film. I personally didn't realize that it was going to be such an enormous success, and I don't know if anybody else was absolutely certain that it was going to be the hit that it was. It really became its own animal, so to speak. It was almost sort of a legend in its own time.
That will bring us back to
It played in many theaters for more than 2 straight years and went on to earn nearly $160 million in its first domestic release.
I attended the first preview of The Sound of Music in Minneapolis and dubbed it The Sound of Money. I was correct.
The future of 20th Century Fox was assured, and during the next 8 years, the Zanuck team, now under the direction of Richard Zanuck, was responsible for a string of equally impressive big-screen blockbusters.
Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch? Outlaws with style. You've never met a pair like Butch and Sundance.
Now, the most phenomenally successful stage triumph of all time is 100 times more exciting on the screen.
You're wasting your time, Dolly Levi. I have no intention of asking you to marry me.
Oh, I suppose that means you want me to ask you. Well, I'm sorry, Horace, I'm turning you down.
With the most fabulous personality of them all, the one and only Barbara Streisand as Dolly.
A planet where man is the lowest order of living things, and the superior beings are apes.
You did it. You cut up his brain, you bloody baboon.
20th Century Fox transforms the motion picture screen into Planet of the Apes.
They
you'd followed my plan, I'd be there by now. I'd cut off the retreat of every damn German battalion on this island.
This is Patton, a salute to a rebel. George C. Scott as General Patton.
I will be proud to lead you wonderful guys into battle anytime, anywhere.
I wonder how a degenerated person like that could have reached a position of responsibility in the Army Medical Corps.
He was drafted.
Attention, 20th Century Fox presents MASH, depicting the outrageous antics of our brave battle surgeons who will keep you in stitches.
I'm Dr. Jekyll, actually. This is my friend, Mr. Hyde.
Put your hands in the air!
Popeye Doyle. If he doesn't like you, he'll take you apart.
Let me bust, Bob! I want to bust!
Doyle is bad news, but he's a good cop. The French Connection.
Although the Zanuck dynasty ended in 1973, 20th Century Fox has carried on the proud tradition of its founders with diverse and memorable successes like Star Wars, Big, Die Hard, Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Independence Day. The studio looks forward to the next century and beyond. What started as a dream in the mind of William Fox in 1914 has become an important part of a diverse and highly successful multimedia empire. The story of 20th Century Fox is a story of thousands of writers, directors, actors, and technicians whose talents made it all possible. It's the story of our century. It's a story that's only just begun.